Welcome to Cozy Coven Chats with Jenny C. Bell, where we explore the journey of the witch. Hello, witches. Welcome to another Cozy Coven Chat. This is for the week of May 17th, and I am your host, Jenny C. Bell. Today is actually my first ever nephew's birthday, Elliot, so shout out to Elliot, happy birthday. This week we also have the beginning of Gemini season. Again, I'm always like, wow. So my son's a Gemini. I'm a Gemini moon. I really like Gemini season. I feel like Taurus season comes in and we get really like cozy and we want to eat things that are yummy and look nice and feel good and be comfortable. And then Gemini's like, let's be social. It's time to get out there. So I like that. Our card for this week from the Angel Numbers deck is 777, Face Fear, Trust the Divine. Your angels are asking you to release the fear of the unknown, trust the universe, and give up your control over what's going to happen next. They're telling you not to fear the future, but rather to embrace it, with faith that is all in your best interest. It is perfect in design, brought to you by your most trusted guides. Go into an easy sitting position with your hands upturned on your knees for a few moments as you honor your faith in the future. So when you meditate and if you put your hands up like that, like in reception, that's what you're telling your body and the energy around you that you are receiving. If you face them down, it's usually for grounding. I often will have one hand up and one hand down for balance. But facing fears, I feel politically in this country, I've had to face a lot of fears. My daughter's 15, she's going to be 16, and we recently had like a very big heart-to-heart about coming to age at this time in this country's history and in the economy that we have. You know, she's like, what do I do? Like, am I going to be able to buy a house? I'm like, I have no idea. But we're here to support you in every way that we can. To be a young person right now is scary, but I did tell her, you know, I came of age and 9/11 happened. Like I was in my first year of college when 9/11 happened, and I had friends going off to war. And so there's always something going on, and everything cycles and everything goes up and down. I'm like, the economy is, you know, I'm not an expert, but eventually it'll get better. And yeah, it's like facing fears. I feel like we've been having to do a lot of that lately, like as a collective, having to face fears, having things come up that you thought were conspiracies or not true, and then finding out they're true. It's been a lot of facing of fears, I think, as a collective, as a country, as a people. It's interesting time. I talk about this, you know, we're here at a transitional time. We're incarnated. We chose to be here. And I take solace in that. And I like that the second part of this card is trust in the divine. Because that's what faith is trusting. Is trusting in your guides and the deities that you work with, is trusting in that. Trusting in yourself. Trusting in your life. You know, I think we all have lessons to learn in every life. I think we come here and we have choices. And I think being in a state of trust is probably the closest to feeling holy that we can experience. Like if we are really in a state of trust and we just feel like this trust, it's like the most holy spiritual experience you can have. And it's not easy to get there. So yeah, we're facing fears this week. You know, super light stuff. But I think it's good. I think we have to do it. I think we have to do shadow work every year. I think we have things come up all the time. And we have choices. Like, do I want to deal with it or not? And if you choose not to, then it comes back. Like, you got to deal with it at some point. So 777, that's interesting too, because like there's a lot of slot machines that use that as like a lucky number. But here the author's like, it's facing fear number. Interesting. Okay, so we're still talking about divergent witchcraft. We're getting into the last 2 chapters. And the next to last chapter is spellcrafting. And I've talked about this a little bit already, but this is a beginner's book. If you've been on the path for a while, it'll still be good for you. But it's definitely written as a beginner's book, because we're all beginners at some point, and we need different ways of learning. And this is a new approach to beginning and building a foundation to witchcraft. And I think it's important. I feel proud, actually, of this offering. I feel proud of this book. I'm excited. It's getting closer to, it comes out in June, so we're getting closer and closer to it actually being here in the world. And we're working on an audio component. So hang in there if you're an audiobook person. I'm like, it's so funny because this book's for it's for anybody, but it definitely has neurodivergence in mind. We need an audiobook. But we'll get there. Okay, so spell crafting. Like I said, looked at all these beginner books, and hardly any of them have a section on how to create your own spells. And it's just, I don't know if they just assume that we can make the leap from building a foundation and understanding correspondences to creating a spell, but a lot of us can't actually make that leap. I remember it took me many years to have the confidence to do my own spells. And then even when I would do them, I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, there was a part of me, because I was raised Catholic, right? So anybody that's ever been in an Abrahamic religion, like, there's an intermediary. Like, you don't get to just talk to God. You talk to God through the priest. And so I'm like, I don't have an expert telling me that, yeah, this is okay to do this spell. Like, am I allowed to do this? Is it going to work? There's all these doubts. And I think that's totally common and totally understandable. So I was like, okay, like, I work with a lot of beginner witches in our coven. Shout out to our coven and all the questions you've asked me over the years, because it's really helped me become a better teacher and a better writer. And I worked with middle and high school students learning English. And so how can I help someone with a spell that's a very abstract, very open, large concept? Like, how can I give you the tools and confidence that will give you the confidence to do this? And I kind of approached it as similar to teaching students how to write essays, because having a student go from elementary school to maybe where they never wrote an essay to reading a piece of literature and writing about it eloquently using quotes and resources is not an easy thing to teach. Because it's like, this is higher level concept. And spell work's the same idea. And so how I did this chapter was like, let's talk about what we can do before the spell. Let's talk about successful components of an actual spell. And then let's talk about what we can do after a spell. So let's have a pre-spell ritual. Let's have an after-spell ritual. And let's have a middle part that teaches you what I think helps you make a good, strong spell. And then the second part of the chapter is just a Q&A. It's like common questions new witches ask about spells and my answer, because I don't see enough of that either in books. Like, people are asking questions online and getting answers from someone who may or may not be an actual qualified person to answer these things. And so I did my research. I live near a metaphysical library. I've been a witch for a long time. And I tried to answer these questions to the best of my ability. So, for example, a question I've gotten is in the book, and I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to paraphrase what I say. But a common question I get is, can I be a witch and not do spells? And yes, of course. You can do the rituals, you don't have to, but you can just like live the life. You can celebrate the Sabbats and go out and see the moon and not do a spell. There's times when I don't have a spell at the time that I want to do. So instead, I'll just go out and see the moon, be like, hey girl, fill me up with some energy. I'll journal, I'll pull cards. I don't actually do a spell. And so that's a common question I get. Another one is, what do we do with the remains of a spell? Because a lot of times that's not specified. They'll be like, an author will say, do all this stuff, use all these things, and then next chapter. Like, well, what do I do with the leftover candle glass? And what do I do with the herbs that are out? And what do I do with the petition I wrote, if I did one? And, that needs to be addressed. And so what we talk about in our coven is we reuse and recycle everything we can, but we cleanse them first. So, with a candle spell, if you have it in a jar, I'm going to clean and cleanse that jar. I'm going to either recycle it if I don't want it, in my recycling bin, or I might reuse it for something. I'm going to repurpose it. And that goes for everything. Like, I'm going to return what I can to the earth, compost it. I'm going to eat the offerings because that's allowed, right? I really, I was a teacher. I anticipate questions. That's part of being a classroom teacher, is like, I'm going to create this lesson plan, and I'm going to anticipate these questions. I'm going to try to head off some of these questions with what I present to the kids, but I have to be ready for the questions. And so I anticipated your questions in the book and gave some answers. And I'm hoping that inspires other authors to do that, if not in books, then like in lives. Like Nicholas Pearson does these really great Instagram lives where he'll just answer questions on crystals. And it's like, he's so nice. He'll just answer these questions on lives, and people can, ask them, and he's humble about it. And he's like, sure, I'll answer these questions. So yeah, that's kind of the basis of this chapter, is like all the stuff we do before builds you up to creating your own spells. And this was actually my presentation at Spirit Northwest, was how to present, how to do a spell. And I will kind of go over what I did real quick in that presentation. But the first thing I talked about was like a difference between a ritual and a spell. And a ritual to me is something that you do either every day, or you repeat it like yearly, monthly, whatever. Whereas spell you might repeat, but it's more of like a one-off kind of a situation. And then I talked about, spiritual protection, spiritual cleansing before spell work, which I go over in the book. And then we talked about allies, which we talked about last week. So like, okay, so what kind of energy are you bringing into the spell? Those are your allies, right? Then the next thing we talked about was correspondences or layers, because I had a friend once say that spells were just prayers with props. And I think the more layers you add, the better and stronger your intention. So we talked about that. I actually found a website. It's wikipedia.wiki.com, and you can look up correspondence tables there. And it's actually a pretty good free resource. We talked about color correspondences too, and, what color candles and what color cloths. And then we got into a pre-spell ritual, which for me is cleansing, grounding, becoming present, setting up your altar space, calling in guides, meditating. And then we talked about a successful spell format, which for me is calling in protection, calling on helpers or allies, stating a desire, doing a magical action like lighting a candle, making a grid, saying thank you, and closing the circle. And then we talked about an after spell ritual, which I think is grounding, journaling, cleaning up, and doing the mundane steps, right? Putting the plan into action. Which hopefully you did under the new moon in Taurus, because that was a really good time to do that. So yeah, that's kind of spell crafting. And I'm going to leave you with a couple questions. So first one is based off of our 777 card. What is a fear that is rising at this time? And talking about spell crafting, do you feel confident creating your own spells? Why or why not? And what is something that you feel makes a spell a spell? Like, I always have to have a candle, or I always have to have this, or I have to have an altar set up. Like, what do you feel makes a spell for you? And that's just something good to think about in general for you in your practice. I hope you have a wonderful week. Blessed be. As always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And be on the lookout for my books, Spirit Crystals, Discover Your Crystal Guide for Healing and Empowerment, and Divergent Witchcraft, an inclusive approach to making magic. And if you want to connect with me more, go to jennycbell.com, JennyCbell.com, to learn about our coven, to learn how to follow me on Substack, and also how to get a reading from me. Blessed be witches.